Hey friends, Jen here. I hope you're having an amazing week. I am just coming to you real quick. We are going to share an encore episode this week with my friend Athen Chimenti as it relates to, he's going to talk about true sidereal astrology, one of my favorite guardrail boundary weekly calendars that I follow. And I always listen to his podcasts and his information each week that kind of guides me and my energy. But I wanted to just share a couple things. First and foremost, I hope you're enjoying the fall weather. I'm absolutely enjoying it myself. I know I sound a little bit like Darth Vader right now, actually, because I was in Florida last week at a beautiful Kathy Heller retreat. However, I picked up a bit of a bug on my way home and have been down and out a little bit since I got back. So I'm on the mend, no worries. But I've been traveling and going to some retreats and visiting family, hosting family, haven't taken some downtime, just having a bit of a fall recharge, refresh, hiatus, if you will, to not only recharge my own batteries, but also take a peek at some things as it relates to the business and the show and just do some tweaks and all the things. Just feels like a good time of year to not only get back to some basics and some routines, but also freshen things up a bit. So again, I hope you are enjoying the 6 weeks of Encore shows. These are some of my favorite shows from season 1 as well as earlier this year. And so Athen is going to walk us through what true sidereal astrology is, how it can be beneficial. But I wanted to share and remind that this show was actually recorded back in December of 2024. So the dates and markers he is referring to were for that time frame, not necessarily current. But the general concept still applies, of course, and all the information is fabulous. I wanted to share this show again because I get a lot of questions about it, but also this is one of my weekly staple routines to, like I said, listen to his show and listen to the energies of the week and plan my schedule accordingly. So I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to reach back with any questions, messages, or feedback, and I look forward to being in your ear next week. Cheers. Welcome to Homes That Heal, the podcast that transforms your life and home into a sanctuary of health, healing, and happiness. Hi, I'm Jen Heller, a wellness educator, infrared sauna expert, and your guide to living intentionally. Each week, we'll explore a variety of wellness tools, along with detoxification, weight loss, and anti-aging tips to boost your energy and align your mind and body so you can thrive in life, not just survive. Your health is your wealth, and it all starts at home. Let's dive in and create a home that heals. Hey friends, Jen here. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to Homes That Heal. Today is going to be a really fun show about true sidereal astrology with my friend Athen Chimenti. But before we dive in, just a quick reminder to hop on over to jenhellerlifestyle.com if you're in the market for a clear-light infrared sauna. Every day is the best day to invest in your health, if you ask me. So do yourself a favor, hop on over to the site, peruse the options, and feel free to call or email me with your sauna questions. I'm here for you. I'm happy to help, and all of my contact information is obviously on the site. Okay, so let's talk about today's show. Whether you don't know anything about astrology or you're an energy junkie like me, you're in for a real treat today. We are going to dive into what true sidereal astrology is, how it differs from mainstream or what's called seasonal astrology, plus how you can use the energies just to be more productive, give yourself some grace from time to time, plus just better enhance your day-to-day life, and we'll explain more. Athen is an astrologer, educator, and leading expert in the field of true sidereal astrology. He is passionate about helping others gain clarity and direction in their lives using a nature-based form of astrology. He's helped thousands from around the world gain clarity through personal readings. He has taught other astrologers to become professionals in the field, thousands through his video courses, plus teaches audiences all around the world. Dissatisfied with modern astrology's disconnection from the natural world, Athen reintroduced the sky-based system ignored for thousands of years. He is dedicated to spreading the word about his timeless system and how powerful it is at bringing clarity and direction to people's lives. I met Athen 3-4 years ago. Time flies. I think it was probably 5 years ago. And after my first reading with him, it not only blew my mind and changed my life's perspective, it really helped me better understand, shape, and align with the path of my future. It's fascinating info. I can't wait for you to listen. So, without further ado, please welcome Athen Chimenti to the show. Hey, friends, Jen here. Welcome back to another show of Homes That Heal. I'm super excited today. Welcome, Athen. How are you today?
Not too bad, but thanks for having me on, Jen. It's great to be here.
We've already established we're in different time zones. Athen is currently in Spain and we are here in the US. So I appreciate you very much taking the time to chat today. So I want to dig into true sidereal astrology. Was introduced to me a few years ago by a friend in a mastermind group. I'd never heard of it before. It kind of blew my mind. I've followed astrology for many years. In fact, I've got a Capricorn sign tattooed on my back. Has an interesting dynamic. But when I learned about true sidereal astrology, it really caused me to pause and look at it differently. So I'd love for you to just take a minute and explain what it is and how it's a bit different than traditional or mainstream astrology.
Yeah, so most of us have heard our sun signs, like you were saying, and the mainstream horoscopes. But the truth is that those placements aren't where the planets actually were when we were born. So, for example, if someone might think they're a Gemini, but in truth, they're a Taurus. And this is because in mainstream astrology, they've essentially deviated from the actual sky. The astrology we use today in the West is called tropical, and that's because it's based around the seasons. And this system started about 2,000 years ago. So, about 2,000 years ago, around 250 AD, we were using tropical. We adjusted to tropical in the mainstream. That's when it became mainstream adopted, basically. And at that time, what they were saying was a Gemini was actually Gemini. So the sky was the way that it was linked with the seasons, for the most part, perfectly linked with the seasons 2,000 years ago. The issue is that the seasons don't match perfectly with the constellations in the sense that the sun does not actually return to the same point in the sky every year. It's very subtle. It's only 1 degree every 72 years in difference. And there's 360 degrees in the sky in a wheel. The sun is only not coming back to the same place once every 72 years. So very subtle, but over 2,000 years, now we have a whole sign different and up to 2 signs different. And this is because of what's referred to as precession, which is the scientific belief is that the Earth is doing a sort of wobble like a top very, very slowly. That's where we get the ages from. But this very slow wobble is what's causing the seasons to not match up with the actual sky. So in other words, in mainstream astrology, they stay fixed with the seasons as they have for the 2,000 years and will continue to do so. But because of the actual wobble of the Earth, the constellations are moving. And this movement has now made it so that the mainstream signs don't use the actual position of the sun or any of the other planets. Now, there's a chance that it might be in the same sign, but it's definitely not the same position. Like you might be a Gemini in both, but it's not the same part of Gemini. It's not the same position. But most of the time, yeah, it's 1 degree off and sometimes up to 2 degrees off.
Interesting for everybody's minds that just blew or like, whoa, I thought I've been a tourist my entire life. And you follow all the things for tourists or Gemini. I don't want to say, what does that mean? But what do you suggest? How can you, I don't say work with both, but what are your thoughts about working with both? Or how does a person, if they, like myself, I had followed this for so long and kind of used that a little bit as a guiding system, but that, I've kind of shifted and I don't really pay too much attention to the traditional mainstream anymore. I follow you, obviously. But what about somebody who wants to, I don't want to say have the best of both worlds, but like, how can you work with these together? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I still find tropical accurate. I think it's still great to use it. I think if something like sidereal or true sidereal crosses your path, then it's something to explore. But if it doesn't resonate, then it's just not the time. Or if it will ever be the time, it doesn't need to be. And basically, in astrology, the way I see it is that we create derivative charts. Okay, so we take a chart and then we can create a derivative from it. So, for example, we might take the natal chart, which is the position of the planets when we were born, and we might create something like the progressed chart, which is not anything in the sky now and wasn't the sky when you were born, but it's this sort of progression of the planets X number of however old you are, X number of days after you were born. But the point here is that it was derived from the original chart. And these are still tremendously accurate. So I use progressed charts, a derivative chart, and it's insanely accurate for predictive astrology. So that's how I see the tropical system. I do see it as a derivative. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree that astrology was originally using the sky. It's very obvious that we got our astrology from the visible sky. But there's nothing wrong with creating a derivative from that. And that's what I think tropical is they basically taken the zodiac and they've overlaid it on top of the seasons. And it's still very accurate, of course, because, well, the seasons are a part of nature. And, the astrology wheel is basically just the wheel of life. So just taking the wheel of life and overlaying it on the seasons, and of course, it's going to be accurate. And it makes sense, too. If you're born during a certain time of the year, of course, you're going to exhibit certain qualities within that wheel of life. So that's what I think tropical is. And so in that scope, I think tropical is the more physical self. I think when you're looking at that derivative chart, you're looking at it from the perspective of the more physical self. And the reason is, as well, the seasons do remain fixed. We can think of this as this sort of wheel of karma, if you will, that stays fixed. And of course, seasons being very physical in that sense that we're always going to be that sun in Gemini for however many thousands of years, no matter what the sky shows. So it's all, very much helpful though, because knowing the physical self and knowing the physical life experiences is tremendously accurate and tremendously helpful there. So, and that's why so many resonate with it, I think. So I say use both, but if you want to use one, go with the one that resonates with you the most. If True Sidereal is new to you, I recommend to at least check it out and just see if it resonates with you or not. But there's no right or wrong system. These are just different mediums for understanding the self, trying to understand the self. But the truth is that the self is so much more than anything that we could put on a chart or put into words. And so I like to say that we're the full zodiac. So no matter what sign you are or where your placements are, you are the whole Aries through Pisces. You're the entire zodiac. And I think the idea is to try to live balanced with all the different signs. And so from that realm, if you want to know more about your karmic or physical life experiences, absolutely look at the tropical chart. Extremely accurate for that, like the sun sign or the ascendant sign is very good for the physical appearance in the tropical chart. What I would say True Sidereal is since it's the actual sky, I would say it's the more fundamental chart. I would say it's the more maybe soul or the spiritual journey, the spiritual self, the life path, things like that. So it's just a different perspective. And so depending on what perspective you're looking at the self from, it's all accurate. And so I would say just make sure you understand what perspective you're looking at it from. So my big thing is to not preach True Sidereal, but just to make others aware that it exists and it is where the planets actually are visibly in the sky.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's exactly, I think, why and how I found you was I was at a place in my life where I wanted to go a little bit deeper into life path, like purposeful type stuff. I had been following tropical for many years and I will say, checked a lot of boxes, but it explained a lot about my personality, different types of the way I organize, how I run my business. It was very much, I don't even want to say surface level because there's different depths and layers to this, but it was more like I had an understanding of who I am, so to speak. But the True Sidereal kind of opened up a much deeper undercurrent or under layer of more fulfillment for me. Like, how can I weave into an alignment to do things in my life that, whether it be career or relationships, what energies can I work with to bring more fulfillment to what my soul really truly wants? That gut intuition. My gut intuition a few years ago was telling me to dig deeper. Don't just run businesses. Don't just do the things you're good at. Really find out what's driving this force and that gut intuition of, should I be doing this? Am I meant to be doing this? Like, how do I find a guiding system that can help me understand truly where my alignment is? And so that's how I happened upon you. So before I go into my next question or a little bit deeper, I think it might be fun to talk a little bit about myself or my chart or some of the things that we've learned, because I think that might put some context to what we're talking about. But I have to ask you, How did you find this? Or did it find you? Or how did you get into this as your life path? I'm curious.
Well, I haven't really done anything in the sense that, the sky has always been there. But it is kind of surprising that we are this far into since the 2000 years that it's taken this long for this to become more mainstream adopted. It is becoming more mainstream adopted. And I think it's really because of technology. We are able to now have these, first of all, planetariums, and that's how I found it. So I was doing tropical astrology like most everybody else. And I knew about sidereal. And if you talk to anyone who's into astrology, chances are they're going to know about sidereal. And, there's even a difference between sidereal and true sidereal, and we can get into all that. But it's like, you know it. It's there. By the way, the East in Vedic Hindu India use sidereal. It is a simplified version of sidereal. It does use the actual sky with their more specific nakshatras. They have a system for it, but just to give credit where credit's due, like in India, they are practicing a very valid form of sidereal. So it's like we know about it, but then it doesn't really become anything, I think, unless we really experience it. And I think that's what you're saying too, like when you experience your chart. So I didn't have that where I could go online and look, but there was thankfully these planetariums. So I was, for example, when this happened, I wanted to look at the full moon that was happening. Again, I'm into astrology. I'm like, all right, let me go check out this. And it was the Gemini Taurus thing. I was like, let me go check out this full moon in Gemini. Again, knowing sidereal and everything, it just didn't even enter my mind that I'm about to go look at the sidereal position. I'm just thinking I'm going to go look at this moon in Gemini. I held my phone up to it, with the program, and there it is, right smack in the middle of Taurus. And so once I experienced it, once I saw it, it became very meaningful to me. And that is when I started to slowly transition away from tropical into what was then mainstream sidereal and then true sidereal after that. But I think it needs to be experienced in a sense. And thankfully for technology, we've just been able to do that. And so I would just say I just came at the right time in the sense that there was no one really there were some providing 13 sign astrology, but nothing to the scale. And I had a YouTube channel at the time, so I built a lot of traction with that. But yeah, technology, thankfully, and software where we can do this too. There's only really one or two astrology programs that are even able to do this because most of the astrology programs are using an even 30 degrees for all the signs. So if we want to use the actual size of the constellations, the actual true sidereal forms of the signs, then you can't even hardly do it. And so thankfully there was Prometheus, which was created by Gavin Burns, which he had custom boundaries. And if it wasn't for those custom boundaries, I wouldn't have even been able to do this. So it was just a lot of things, lining up at the right time. But I think this is what we're seeing in all industries. I think in all industries right now, we are going back to nature. We are going back to our roots, the more fundamental things that work. And astrology is no different than these other industries right now.
Yeah, amen to that. I talk about that often on the show, but just in general, and even in the conversations that I'm having, I work in the wellness space, saunas and all of that. People are calling and having conversations. Of course, I sell a product and I can offer certain services, but really the true conversation that we're having every day is getting back to basics, primal living, nature, working with the sun, working with the moon, working with the energies, and there's anxiety and stress. And my answer is go outside, go lay in the grass, go spend 10, 15 minutes laying and let Mother Earth hold you, feel the earth energy, listen to yourself, listen to your gut, take some time for peace. And thankfully, I think we're all experiencing this shift. I think it's an exciting time to be alive. I know there's a lot of, some would call it chaos. I call it energy shifting, but I think there's a shakedown happening where people in general are starting to get back down to core basic values, growing their own food, homeschooling, spending time reading and educating through books and regular learning instead of online holding phones, just kind of getting away from the noise. And so I am, like I said, so excited to be working in this space and alive during this time to be able to have this platform and share these conversations, because I think this is what people like, they're yearning for it, even if they don't know they're yearning for it. Like I said earlier, people may or may not have ever heard this, but they're going to get a gut intuition of, oh, I should maybe check into that, or that's interesting information. Let me poke around and look into that. And again, that kind of leads me back to how I found you was I was at a time in my life, I just let go of my business. It was shortly after COVID. I was in a really lost period where COVID came along, closed down my wellness center, something I had worked many years for. It was basically my identity in some ways. And here this situation comes, and within a couple of months, I have nothing. In my mind, I had nothing. I was like, it's gone. My employees are on unemployment. What do I do? Where do I go? What is this for? Why is this happening for me? Why is this happening to me? I was trying to discern the difference. And so that was where my head and my heart was when I was trying to find a deeper level of where do I go from here. That's when I found your weekly forecasts. And I'm all about plugging in my information in a chart to get some guidance system. And so fortunately, your website is extremely valuable with a ton of great information. And I could poke around and find that. And that's what I did. I put in my birth date and my place of birth, and it gave me some information. And then that information led me to schedule a call with you to dig a little bit deeper into that. But can you speak to a little bit? I mean, you can use, I don't expect you to memorize my chart or even know what it says on the spot here, but speak to anything in and around what these charts look like, and or how does one use it as a guiding system?
Yeah, totally. So, what I like to focus on the most, which is what we did in your reading, is the life path.
Yeah.
So, the planets are helpful in terms of this is how I express myself with the sun, or this is how I feel with the moon. This is all very helpful. But what I find the most helpful with astrology is the life path, and particularly with the north and south nodes, which, if your audience wants to check that out, like you said, there's a calculator on the website at masteringthezodiac.com. It's absolutely free. Just type in your birth details. You can see everything there. And those are the horseshoe looking things in the chart. So the north node is the sort of N, right side up horseshoe, and then the upside down one is the south node. But these positions and then the planets associated with them. And the reason is that this is really where the free will comes into the chart. This is where I feel like the most helpfulness comes from astrology, because basically it's crazy how this happens. And by the way, the nodes are basically the intersecting paths of the sun and moon. So you have the sun, which is the ecliptic, the path of the sun and the planets in the sky. And then you have the moon, which isn't on that. It has its own path. And so where those cross are the nodes. And that's also where we have eclipses, by the way. And eclipses have been revered through ancient civilizations for their importance and power. So these are like the eclipse points where an eclipse would be if we were having a new moon or full moon at any given time. But anyways, just that's the sun and moon. These are the two most important bodies of the chart. These intersecting paths are crazy in terms of how accurate they are at when we live in alignment with them. When we are in alignment with our path, our life is like flowing, we're fulfilled, everything's clear, we have direction, things are moving. When we're off of it, when we're never perfectly on either, so it's always in varying degrees, but when we're, particularly off of our paths, that's where we feel the most stuck. We feel the most lost, losing energy with things, uncertain and whatnot. And that's what I specialize in my work now, almost exclusively. I used to just kind of, hey, here's your personality. And I do that too, like with the reports. I have a full report of your personality and all that. But in terms of actually like working with people, like one-on-one, like we did, the nodes are by far the most helpful, because basically if I can help you, if I can help the person align to the life path as the way the chart is suggesting, the life becomes very fulfilling. And it gives us a very clear direction in terms of how to align to it, and also maybe why some areas are unfulfilled. And it really starts to make just a whole lot of sense in terms of the past, and then again, how to incorporate it into now and the future. So if there's one area that I recommend anyone really dive deep into with astrology in general, of course, all the systems have the nodes, but it is the north and south nodes. It's so simple, but yet so accurate. You only look at this part of the chart, ideally with some of the planets associated with them. But even if you didn't, even just those planets in the chart, I think you're getting 80+% of what value astrology has to offer. So what the life path is and how to align to it, I think is by far the most helpful.
Yeah.
And I do have, your chart here if you did have any questions or wanted to look into it.
Oh, we could turn this into a personal generating. That would be kind of fun. So, two things I want to mention on that. One of the things I will never forget, and I mentioned this to Mark quite a bit, my husband, is the first time I scheduled an actual reading with you and a call with you to look at this life path. And it isn't just like what's in front of us this week. I mean, it's going back in the life, what have you experienced and what is on the horizon? And this was a few years ago, so I can't exactly remember, but you asked me questions about periods of my life. Like I remember you asking me about 2008, 2009. You said, well, we were talking about something very pivotal happened at that point in my life. And it was like, that is when my health journey started. That is when I found out I was toxic with heavy metals. That is when I discovered I needed to get divorced. That is when I realized I was not working in my alignment in my career. That was the shift in my life. And you pegged it. And I don't say you pegged it. You were just reading my chart, of course, but you walked me through that time. And then fast forward, I can't remember, I think it was 2013, 2014. That was actually when I shifted into action. That's when I opened my wellness center. That's when I actually made a ton of moves in my life, like big moves. That's when I hit the full reset button. Awareness came in 08 and 09. Reset button came in 2013 and 14. And you were telling me what I already in my mind knew from a timeline standpoint. So these things were lining up. So for me, I don't want to say that's validation, but it was kind of the validation in my mind. It's like, okay, this is making sense. That makes sense over the last 15 years. Okay, let's look forward. Here's where I'm at right now. Here's where I've got some decisions. I know you and I talk sometimes. My business and my career is important to me, being in service to others. And so it allows you to ask questions and look at different time frames when I don't say when you can have an expectation, but when you can work with that period to make those decisions. And I have to tell you, and I know I've told you this every time we do a reading, and it's a couple times a year, we kind of jump on a call and deep dive into this. It lines up. Like you pegged something. You told me something back in 2022. In February, you told me something that there was going to be a shift in my life in May of 2022. And I thought, okay, we'll see what happens. I was kind of like a little curious. And sure enough, something significant happened in and around that time that completely moved me in a different direction in life, in business, and in life. And I remember Mark and I were in Florida and I got a phone call. That was the phone call that changed my life, actually, and shifted me in a different direction. And I remember telling Mark that evening, I said, Athen was right. I said, Athen, we talked about this, looking at this over the course of the year when I charted out some of my goals. He mentioned this time frame being kind of a pivotal point and that I needed to be aware that I need to move with this energy. And that's exactly what I did. And that's why I feel so strongly about this. When you work with it and you just have an understanding of how you can work with it, to your point, doesn't mean that it's not the chart, it's not the thing, it's just an awareness of how you can work with the energies. And that's where that weekly forecast comes in now. I listen to it on Sundays, usually Sunday nights or Monday mornings. I hear you spend about 10, 15 minutes of going through where we're at this week and how can you kind of build your schedule and the things that you want to accomplish in and around the energy so that you can be in flow. And I've been doing that now for a few years. It's one of the number one things I recommend to people if you're feeling off or feeling out of alignment. Consider something like this because it can help you get in the current of alignment. It's worked wonders. Doesn't always feel good, right? Doesn't mean that life's unicorns and rainbows. However, when you have an awareness of this, you feel more like you're following the path of your life. And so I don't know, that's kind of a ramble. I'm hoping if people follow that, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's the intention of your weekly forecast, as well as in the deeper dive work you can do individually. But the weekly forecast is where it's at for me right now.
I like to think of it as the weather of the collective path. And, this again comes back to connecting more with nature, because if we weren't sitting inside all the time or, busy, we would be like our ancestors did, sitting under the night sky in front of a campfire every night and tracking literally where these travelers are in the sky and telling stories about it, these planets. And so it's like the weather in the sense that, like you're saying, it's like when we're in attunement with nature, we're symbiotic with nature, our life is just all in all better. The more separate we get from nature, and that includes our true self, it includes our nature, like everything else too.
Mm-hmm.
But when we, are removed from nature, I think that's where the most challenges, happen. So it's not that we need astrology. It's just another great tool to help us connect to nature. But I'll guarantee, like, someone who is able to go outside every night and not even look at the stars, but just go outside every day maybe and just connect with the plants, the trees, the animals, is going to feel connected. We don't even need to be able to describe this stuff. The words that I use in the weekly and all this are the words themselves are meaningless. What I'm trying to convey is a sort of underlayer. What's the, like you were saying, the energy? But this energy can be felt. This energy should be felt. I mean, yeah, I think our ancestors are feeling it all the time and they were vibing with it 24/7, and now we're so separate from it that when we get hit with it, we're like, wow, this is so, because we've missed that connection to nature.
Hmm.
True sidereal astrology is just astrology in general, but I think especially true sidereal with the signs is just another way to reconnect with the energy of the times. Because I guarantee you, anyone out there, like, feel how you feel during a new moon, feel how you feel during a full moon, and tell me there's not a difference. Now, it's great to know whether it's a new moon or full moon, right? Because then I can say, hey, it's a new moon. Maybe you should just take it easy, maybe plant some new seeds. And if it's a full moon, I should say you should be all action and all this. But do you really need me to tell you that? Feeling like moon that you would. Well, okay, yeah, I do too. But my point is it's there. The energy's there, and we're all experiencing it. But yeah, I agree. It is nice to be able to have that language. Astrology is a language to be able to discuss it, talk about it, and throughout these many thousands of years we've been doing this, come up with very practical ways to utilize it. So we know that when it's that full moon, that it's a good time for certain things.
Yeah. And I laugh about it. And all joking aside, I do really truly appreciate you sharing it because I'm a Capricorn. I can get lost in my work. I can spend a lot of time to a fault in work. So listening to your forecast or working with the energy when it says to take a rest, it's almost like Earth giving me permission to today's a day to go within. I literally can't emphasize enough how much would I listen to this. I say, okay, yeah, this weekend is a great time to go within, enjoy a good book, take a bath, do healing. You know my story from a healing perspective, paralyzed on the left side, chasing my health backwards for a few years, trying to force something when really all my body needed me was to rest. I really needed to listen and rest. And so this has also brought a deeper awareness to me of it gives me the days where I can hit the go button and I can really work with that energy and get things done, whether it be in the home or in the business. And then there are other days where it's like, you know what? I am just going to take a day and I'm going to read my book for 4 hours this morning and I'm going to do some meditation. This feels like a good day to do that. And Athens said I could. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm laughing about it, but I'm not joking. It really gives me permission to ease and, ebb and flow with my time because I can get lost in the go mode too much. And so it allows me to work with the energy to go within and maybe sleep in or, just do some other things to take care and nurture myself. And you're right. We all should be outside. Before I do these podcasts, 5, 10 minutes before we jump online, because we're using, fortunately, we're on other sides of the globe. The internet allows us access to do this. However, I like to ground myself. It snowed last night here. It's 30 degrees. I went outside barefoot, but the sun is out and it's gorgeous. I stand there and I do my meditation. I ground and my feet are on the earth and I give gratitude for this opportunity, give gratitude for our home, this earth, this up, what I get to do, get to speak with you and just ground down before I come back in and jump into electronics, right? But it allows us to have this grounded conversation. And so it's working with the earth's energy to do and be more productive in what we're doing. So that's how I use it. That's one of the many reasons why I wanted to talk to you today and shine a bright light on this because it's so powerful. And I share this with people when they ask me what I'm doing. 2024 has been a very interesting time, an interesting year. We're coming to the end of the calendar where a lot of people like to wipe the slate clean and start anew. Anything that you can speak to what we're coming off of and where we can kind of launch into for the new year.
Yeah, totally. Well, the winter solstice, right? So I find that to be the actual new year. It's the astronomical new year.
Hmm.
You could say spring too, that's fine, but it is the lowest point that the sun will travel in the year. And so in astrology, we consider that the beginning of the cycle. So as we approach the solstice and completing current yearly energy, let this be in a yearly sense the lowest energy of the year. So the same way that a new moon for a month is the lowest energy of that month, We are, of course, approaching basically the balsamic or the ending phase of the solar year, and this is a time to clear and reset. It also aligns with the placements because literally right now the sun is over the galactic center. So we didn't talk about a fucus. A fucus is another sign that was actually removed from mainstream astrology. So it's considered the 13th sign. For those who've heard about it, a fucus. But if you use a planetarium software, you go outside, you will see another constellation above Scorpio called a fucus that does pass through the ecliptic, the path of the planets. And so by definition, a constellation that passes through the ecliptic is a zodiac sign. But anyways, it's the 13th taboo. It's where the center of our galaxy is. We obviously are very familiar with our orbit around the sun. What we don't spend enough time with, or at least don't talk enough about, is the fact that we're orbiting around the whole solar system that we're in is orbiting around the center of the Milky Way, the center of the galaxy. And this is like the galactic sun. So when planets pass over this point, it's extremely energetic. It is the transformative part of the sky. And again, for those who've seen it, or even in pictures, it's that extreme bright cluster of stars that basically looks like the atmosphere. But this is where the sun is right now. And this will change because of precession, like we talked about over thousands of years. But right now, we are getting closer to where the winter solstice is approaching the sun in a fucus during that time. So the sun is in Sagittarius right now during the winter solstice. It's going to take beyond our lifetimes, but it's been getting closer and closer to that galactic center. It'll be there about 450 years, just to give a perspective. But the point here is that it is there right now. So in many ways, we're experiencing both an ending of the solar year and also, in a way, the ending of the solar energy, because the sun is finishing its cycle with the galaxy, with the galactic center. And that's literally happening now. So spiritual time, good to turn within. It's definitely a yin time, receiving from life, more inwards, spiritual, prioritizing these kinds of things, clearing, doing a bit of a reset. We will have the new moon just after the solstice, which is cool. I'll give you the exact date here. So we'll have the first new moon of the solar year on December 30th, December 31st, depending on where you are in the world, but around there. And it's going to, of course, be in Sagittarius. That'll then start like the really ascending out of the both galactic cycle with the galactic center, the solar cycle with the winter solstice, and then, of course, the lunar cycle, which, again, the lunar cycle will be at its lowest point on December 30th, but then starts to rise out from there. So these are things that, our Gregorian calendar has us out of sync with because, well, this actually kind of synced up. Interestingly enough, it doesn't always sync up, but this one's actually kind of close to this January 1st, So I might say, the beginning of the year is the new moon after the solstice, which would be, in this case, December 30th, December 31st. So it's pretty close here. But,
Yeah.
a lot of times we're kind of, misaligned to that. So that's how I would say is a good way of, I think, just working with the energy now, kind of seeing the energy. We have Mars retrograde. It's a time to be reconsidering things. Mercury was just retrograde. So just good to kind of do that reset, I think, right now.
Awesome. Okay. That's exciting. I know a lot of people have questions. What is the best place to start, or how can people connect with you? I know we've talked about your weekly forecast on your YouTube channel. So let everybody know how they can find you, or a good place to start, or what would be some good action steps for people that, whether this is new or they're aware of it, where they go from here to really kind of, if they want to start the new year off on a different path or do some additional discovery.
Yeah. So if this is resonating with you, it sounds interesting. Either way, I highly recommend just at least go look and see where the planets were when you were born. So there we have a free chart calculator, as you said. So masteringthezodiac.com. You can also Google Mastering the Zodiac. And right there, view your true signs. You go straight to the calculator. So on there, you will see both a chart form, and what I'm really proud of, what we just created was the actual visualization, like that app I was telling you about. So you can actually visually see exactly where the planets were during your birth, which is really cool. But below that is a interpretation. So you'll get a little mini report of what it means to have your sun in that sign, in your true sidereal sign, what it means to have your moon in that sign, and also your ascendant. If you know your time of birth, you don't need your time of birth, but if you do, you get more information that way. So see if it resonates, see if it's helpful, see how it feels. And if it does, I'm happy to give your audience a 50% discount. So put the link in the show notes, I think, right? And if it resonates, you get the full 15-page full-on report listing all of the placements and e-reading as well about your chart there, going into everything if you want. But again, just start with visualizing it. Just go look, see how it feels, see how the mini report resonates, and go from there. Like you said, there's also the weekly forecast if you want to stay in tune with the collective energies. We have live streams. I have courses if you want to learn astrology. There's also one-on-one readings like, we've done, but it's all there at the website, masteringthezodiac.com.
Yeah, it's all fascinating. Thank you so much for that beautiful gift for my community as well. I know that's very appreciative. Yeah, people can dip their toes into this, check into it, or dive deep. I just really appreciate you. I know we could have probably dissected my chart a little bit and given some more context, but that's probably another conversation. But I just appreciate you personally. I know I've expressed to you, you've changed my life. Your work has changed my life. Us being connected and me getting better in alignment with my life path has changed my life. And so I'm so grateful for you, and I'm excited to share you and this topic or this discussion with my community as well. So thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely be chatting and connecting in the future. So
sounds great. It's my pleasure. Look forward to it.
Okay, friends, thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Athen, for joining me today. I just love his insight and weekly forecast. I look forward to it in my inbox every Sunday. Overall, I could talk astrology all day. It has always intrigued and inspired me. That's probably why I wanted a telescope when I was like 6. If the stars and planets interest you too, plus you're curious what they say about your life path, please check out his info in the show notes, connect with him, and see where it leads you. Also, if this show or any of my shows are helpful, thank you for writing a review, rating the show, and sharing it with your friends and family. It's truly the way the world goes round, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, my friends. Cheers to your health and happiness, and we'll see you next week. Okay, friends and fellow wellness warriors, thanks for tuning in today. If this show was helpful and inspired you, please head over to Apple or Spotify to rate, review, subscribe, and follow us, as well as share it with your friends and family. It's a fantastic way to grow the show, expand my reach, and teach others how to create a vibrant life they love. If you're ready to invest in your health and purchase a clear light sauna, hop on over to jenhellerlifestyle.com and send me a note. Thanks again for tuning in. I love you. I'm grateful for you, and I thank you so much for your support. You are the reason I do this work. You are the reason I do this show. And you are the reason I get up every single day with a burning desire in my soul. Cheers to your health and happiness, my friends. We'll see you next week. This podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.